Hello and welcome. Today we're going to be looking at some of the advanced tips and tricks for your base building within Outpost Infinity Siege. This is somewhat of a collection of different strategies, tips and tricks collected from the community. Thought I'll just try to consolidate them here in this video. Some of it will be really helpful, some of it you may know. As always, use the chapters for the stuff you've already covered or know, and you'll save time that way. If you do get anything out of this, consider liking and subscribing, really goes a long way. And for all those tips that people have recommended, thank you so much. If you've got any other building tips, leave them in the comments. It's all really helpful, and we can make another part 2, try to get all the different things together. Keep in mind there are some updates coming, so some of the building stuff will change, but for the most part, pretty much all this I believe will stay the same. So it should be pretty much applicable forever, hopefully. Let's see. But do note there are some changes coming. We'll definitely cover those as time goes on. But anyway, enough yabbering, let's get straight into it. So the first thing we're going to cover is looking at some of the best, optimal, most efficient ways to lay out your engine room, they call it. I don't know what the quotes are for, but your engine room, your first floor, that being one of the most critical aspects to your base. Not necessarily, but the most common practice is to build your first level with a ton of generators, material crates, and batteries. So with all those things, that's going to be jacking up your power, your material, and your core outpost. And just a quick shout out to Leo, who provided half this base for me. This was just a really helpful, quick little starter, just so I didn't have to muck around completely. But I've gone and added some extra stuff just to give a bit more fleshed out detail in these different ideas and builds. So there's a couple things we need to understand before we consider building a crazy engine room, first floor, whatever you want to call it, is that the core outpost only scales your hard attack damage up until 3000. So just to reiterate, so the core outpost, it's going to bring this up so you can see it a bit clearer. So core power up to 3000, that's going to give you the maximum turret damage of 300%, and that's going to impact your guardians, your counteract will all benefit from that damage boost. Your X field will scale up to 300%, aka 3000. Scan range is going to max out at 250 meters, whereas your X field will max out at 200 meters. And from what I understand, your X range goes to about 200 meters from the center of your tower, and the area scan duration is 30 seconds max. And what happens beyond 3000 for your core power, well, it's only going to impact your player defense within the X boost field. I think it's about a 5 or 10% increase from memory per 1000 core power. So the reason we want to understand this is that the way you lay out your base, you really will want to be aiming for a core outpost of a minimum 3000, which does mean you don't necessarily need, millions and millions of generators to get to this core outpost, because there's a few different factors that impact this figure. For instance, we've covered this, but we'll just quickly touch base on it. Some of your panels will increase it as well. You've got your utility wall, your generic panels. There's a few things that will increase this figure. We won't go through all those because that's sort of the basic stuff, but it's just important to know you're aiming for 3000 for your end game build. Now you can go well over that and get a nice defense boost. So breaking this down into your sort of early mid game to late game most efficient engine room builds is we'll start off with the tier 1. So your tier 1 are your basic batteries, your generators, and of course your material crates, these little guys. So we have a few different options and layouts, and if you know of any others or you got any other suggestions, let me know in the comments. We'll be doing a follow-up to the advanced building guides for sure down the track, but for now, this first build, we covered this in the beginner tutorial, so we won't spend much time on this. I'll try link the video so you can check it out, because we go through how to exactly build this setup. So I got this build off a legend from Discord called Teach. Very good build, I really like it. The good thing about this is it covers batteries, generators, and you would be putting your crates in there as well, your material crates. So that kind of covers everything. It packs it quite nicely, and I would highly recommend this sort of build for your very early game, because you won't have access to pillars, and plus it's just a really neat and compact way to really structure your engine room to really maximize your efficiency, and the energy density within this is pretty tight. Moving on to your mid game, where you do get access to pillars, you can consider looking at similar builds to this. These are probably some of the most efficient builds for your mid game. So for instance, if we were to compare this first initial early stage setup, you'd be getting, at least within this 6 squares of your generic panel, your generic utility panel, you'd be getting a total of 6 generators in this build. However, if you go with the pillars are kind of crazy in the sense that if we were to max out the same size just using pillars, noting that pillars can take 2 generators on 2 pillars, and that you can build 6 pillars across 2 of these panels, giving you a potential to actually build up to 20 within this one tile here, this utility tile here. So the pillars really transform your energy density per tile. So the pillars will give you a lot of optionality, because you can then also switch into batteries, and you could hang 6 batteries on on a spacing of 2 tiles. Alternatively, you could attach 6 simply just by removing generators and then, throw in the same exact copy onto the other side. You can also mix and match too if you really wanted to. You could do a couple generators and then the batteries as well. Something like this, we got 2 batteries up top. Or you could do it the opposite way where you have it on the bottom. But these are just to give you some ideas. But it's a pretty straightforward build. You're just building pillars on these little middle connections, just in these middles where the tiles connect. So there's a lot more connection points along these connections of the different tiles, if that makes sense. Whereas if you branch out into the middle, you have limited and there's more spaces. So less connecting points. And I'll go and show you some examples of some much more built out bases using this kind of method, just so you have a better understanding. And I will try link all the different bases we look at and builds in the description, so you should be able to import all of these yourself and have a look so you understand exactly how they're built. If you find that helpful, do consider liking and subscribing. That will really help. Thank you. So playing around with pillars, there's also another way you can get even more efficiency out of your pillars by using the small tiles. So with the small tiles, we can jam an insane amount of generators within the space of the equivalent 6 tile spacing used in this example here. We'll peel this back just so you can get a better understanding of how this is sort of laid out, but it's pretty straightforward. Again, it's just using the little tiny tiles. Pretty much, I think they're just made out of scrap metal or basic material from memory. You go have a look. Yeah, basic material. You can build a ton of these very, very easily. So for this, it's pretty straightforward. We're just going to be lining these up along the main center of that small little tile, and then it's just pretty much like almost a 1 tile space and doing the exact same placement on the other side. So it's basically pillars on one side, one little small tile gap, and then you're whacking the pillars in the middle again on that 3rd tile. So when you put it like that, that allows you just enough space to be able to squeeze 2 generators basically kissing each other. But do note, there is a little bit of a trick to getting the generators on, because say if we try attach some of these bad boys now, which is fine on one side, and then we go try place these, it's not going to work. You're going to hit the overlapping issue. What you need to do in the situations where you find you cannot attach them, if that ever happens, all you got to do is just delete the pillar, the 2 pillars that it's on, and then rebuild the pillars, because that will reset it, and then you'll be able to build them so close together. Just something to note there, as that's happened to me a few times. So if you did go with the build like this, or a partial mix and match between these, it's going to be a highly effective way to get a lot of batteries and generators, depending on which way you want to structure it. Now, batteries won't be able to fit into this little build, but the generators fit very nicely. And if you were to build the same 3x3 or the 6 tiles, the same as this earlier example, you'll probably be able to get 100 generators within that same space, which is huge. So it's a really good way to add a much needed core outpost boost in a very small condensed area. This can really help your build depending on what you're going for. These are probably the 3 best early examples, your early to mid game builds that you can muck around with. Now, if you do want a closer look, again, you'll be able to check these in the description yourself so you can get a much better understanding and a hands-on feel for it. But moving on to the more advanced builds. Now, the advanced build come a bit later because you'll get access to the larger material storage and you'll get access to the bigger battery pack. However, for the most part, your small generator builds are going to pretty much be something similar to a combination of using the pillars and in some case your utility walls. Now, when it comes to the advanced setup, the most optimal way to build your batteries on your pillars is to do it on the ground floor and to remove the base tile, because with that you can actually fit in 2 of the giant batteries on 6 pillars. However, if you do have the tiles on the bottom, you'll only be able to put down the 1 because it just can't, it overlaps just a little bit. So you can't kind of do that, which is a little unfortunate, but that's just a little tip there. It is better to remove the tile to get the most optimal build and squeeze as much in. You would remove the bottom tile and throw in the battery pack. And by doing something like that, again, you could follow the similar sort of build principles as what we looked at for the earlier stages, placing 2 large battery packs on one side of the pillar, and then you could have a whole line of generators. So very similar concept. We don't need to spend much more time on that. Do note you can also go for some other builds where you stack your pillars on top of each other. You just need to get power to them via the stairs, and you could just run them up your pillars similar to something like this. Same with your generators. So just keep that in mind. There is optionality there to build 2 floors, 3, 4, however many floors you want. You could just do a little vertical build of your generators and your batteries. You could do a vertical build, and that might suit your base quite nicely. Now, when it comes to optimizing your battery packs with your material storage, it's a pretty simple build as well. well. It's just a matter of placing the 2 battery packs on your generic panels and then squeezing in some of the large material storage just on the bottom. And from my understanding, there's not really much more optimization for that kind of build when looking at battery packs and material storage. It's basically just replicating this same build for your ground floor, and then just throwing in some of the pillars or some of the alternative builds using a variety of the other stuff that we've covered. Something else to consider is that you can use your armored walls as well with some of the advanced battery packs. That also allows you to put your material storage down. So that can be kind of little potent little tip there, because that does give you quite a bit of extra health or HP on your bottom floor. Just something to consider. Keep this in mind. You can run your pillars along these connection points of the utility tiles or the tiles, and you could do that either direction. You could line it up horizontal, or you could do sort of a vertical straight down. Not sure exactly which one would work out to be slightly better, but I imagine running it vertical, giving you the longest stretches, would probably be a little bit better, if not the same. So nothing too different about the horizontal or vertical way to do it. So I don't think it matters too much, but let me know if that's not right. But I imagine doing it vertical would be the best option there. Now you can apply all those same build methods to your larger armored tiles, keeping in mind that they operate and have the same connections and placements as, say, 4 of the utility tiles. They have the same connections in the same points, basically, from my understanding. So just an example here is we're just connecting, say, these 4 tiles and the alignments of their connecting points and just overlapping that with an armored tile. From my understanding, it's pretty much a 1-for-1. So we can see here, there's a cross here with this connection. You can do the exact same on the large utility tile, and then same again with crossing on the vertical lines, same deal, and then same again for the horizontal. So it's basically your large armored tile is just the same as 4 singular utility tiles, but it just has a lot more health. So that's kind of a quick rundown of some of the most or more efficient ways you can structure your engine room. We're just going to take a quick look now at some of the more built out formats that some of the community members have posted, and I'll make sure to leave a link in the description so you can check them out. So here is an example from Kurogane that he's very kindly shared with me. So we're just going to have a quick look. This is a bit of a mixture of it all, where he's combined the use of pillars and utility all in the one. So this is a good example of how you could consider structuring your engine room with a bit of a combination of everything. As you can see here, he's using some of the pillars, which you could technically, if you wanted to, put in small tiles and get a lot more gains out of this small area. You could also consider removing the tiles to be able to get 2 of the big advanced battery packs on either side. But it just gives you an idea. You can mix and match it, and a nice little touch there. Now, if you want an insanely decked out ground floor, which will save you a ton of time, that kind of encompasses a bit of the best of everything, is this space or this ground floor done by Shohq. Apologize if that's not how you say her name, but this is a very nice ground floor that you can import if you have all the materials to complete it, which is a lot of different things you need to be able to manage this and pull it off. But this is a beautiful example of mixing it all together. You can see he's using a combination of generators, material storage, pillars, small material boxes, small material crates, nested on what seems to be a mixture of your armored tiles and some of your utility tiles. So important to pay attention to the layout here. He's got 3 of the armored tiles and then 3 of the utility tiles in the middle. It'll giving you room to be able to attach some of the more sturdier panels that will boost up the HP of your ground floor. But what an incredible ground floor or engine room. Absolutely incredible. And it's a really good way to start if you are one of those people that don't have time and are using cheats to smash through this and build the base you want. This is just a really cool quick copy and paste that you could do. Definitely understand why you would do that. There's a lot of time in this game that you need, but this really gives you a good example of how to make some of the more efficient engine rooms. Now, if we were to strip this apart, it's pretty much using a combination of everything that we sort of discussed. If you really wanted to make this technically more efficient, you would probably be looking to do a build or a mixture of builds between your small tiles and your utility tiles, or even just a complete build of small tiles, and then in some cases just having no tiles. So I wonder, you could probably do a half-half as maybe an idea, but ultimately when you completely deck out your ground floor like this, or with any kind of variation to this, you're going to be pretty sweet. You have a ton of core outpost power, you have more material than you'll ever possibly need pretty much, and you have excellent power. So it's a really good building block, but a nice example of the way you can mix it up. And another example, this one's by Teach. This is just duplicated version, or a layered version I should say, where you do have 2 floors using a combination of your generic panels and the windows on the side there, or you could replace that with something else. You could do armored, whatever you need. But if we take a look and open open this up, we can see that he's used the hollow tiles with the material storage as well, and he has the pillars in there. So the pillars, not sure if they add too much value to this, but maybe they do. Maybe just an extra support for when you build, probably just for the extra support. Makes sense actually. Why would you leave that space empty? So yeah, a nice little attribute there. I mean, you could kind of take those out almost, and you could almost put fill that last bottom bit full of material crates or the material storage. Again, another great example of how you could structure your ground floor. Now I was going to go into some other details, some other tips and tricks, but we'll save that for part 2 of the advanced building guide, just because this one has probably been a bit late. But thanks very much for joining me. I hope you learned something. I hope this was helpful. Definitely let me know in the comments if I've done anything wrong. There's better ways for it. If you've got some better structured or more efficient builds, definitely send me an email with the import code and I'll check it out and I might chuck it into the next video. But anyway, thanks very much. I'll catch you next time. Cheers.